So, you just started playing SD Gundam Battle Alliance, and no one's really told you what to really kind of look for when you do start playing this game. So people have been enjoying these guides, so I'm going to help you guys on your journey with this, but obviously I can't help you with the little parts, but I'm going to tell you the passives you should always look out for when grinding this game, because if I knew these passives beforehand, I think I would have had an easier time. So this is for you future players getting in and playing the game throughout and unlocking certain characters and pretty much having the best parts you can use in these types of situations. So let's take Epion as an example. So the most important parts for Epion is going to be B melee, but he also needs physical melee just for his other attacks, so they do some decent damage. But this would still add up to the 1800 worth of melee damage. So it's just like an extra couple percentage to it. So since he has 1800, his physical melee 22%, which is probably just an extra 40 to that special attack. With the 1800 included, it will definitely give you some results on that sub weapon. When it comes to B melee, which is the most important one because this is where his combo string begins, you want the B melee up more than usual. So that's how you're going to swing a little bit harder and get your combo strings going, while your sub weapons will do a little bit of the damage here and there since he is a physical melee character. Another example of a character like Kai. Usually you just want to focus on his physical melee because he hits like a truck. So if you get a high physical melees, you can find these on lower parts, by the way. You can find them on lower parts with probably high percentages. It'll just be like a lower number, but they will hit for the right amount of damage when you're on said stage. Not being at level 100 that I am, but you'll still hit like a normal unit. So always look for anything high in the 20s if you can, or if it only goes up to 11 or 15. Just get these items and you will have a pretty solid playthrough depending on what your character pretty much is about. So pretty much when you take a look at an all-rounder, let's do Unicorn for example. He may say beam range, beam range, beam range, but the main thing I'm focusing on, if I can affect both, is beam melee range. Because at least it'll do some extra little damage, but I don't stray from my actual melee damage for this character since he does have a lot of beam range with a physical. I don't focus on that too much to the extent where I just want to focus on heavy damage in my beam melee count so I can actually damage the opponent because I'm probably good to go in. But if it comes to mobile armors, you would change this up to like a couple ranges since you're not going to melee, or balance them out with some range items and such. I mean, that's how Unicorn is kind of built that way. Another example, I mean, Destiny to me was more of like a big melee fighter due to the fact that, yes, the sub weapons are all beam range, but you rather just make sure all of his attacks are beam melee up or beam range melee up, so that way your range attacks do a little bit more damage, not a lot, but enough to break the Gundam's barrier so you can do a combo extension to the point where you might kill them. But like I said, always look for something like beam melee up, so on and so forth, because those are going to be your go-tos because you want it to relate to the character. Even though he has a hybrid special, which is pretty much a physical, and which is pretty much physical. I mean, I just go full physical for that. Physical, more like beam melee. So you just have your beam melee up, and the special will do some damage because all the all-rounders have really good damage. What's a character? Rebake's probably the only one that's different from most of these guys. I built Rebake with more of a range type setting, since he does hit hard on that 110mm rifle. That's the whole reason why I see physical melee range up, physical melee range up, and physical melee range up, because I want this attack to hit like a truck. And not only do I have that, you see this sub weapon too? This is also a good find because this gets added since this is a sub weapon too. That's a 37.5% added to the physical count, which only your second sub weapon will do the most damage, but it'll do a hell of amount of damage. A hell of amount of damage. Like, any weapon that says sub attack up is only going to affect your main range. I don't think it affects your main range. It affects mostly your sub weapons, which is sub weapon 1 and 2. So those are the things you kind of want to get up for certain characters. That's another parts you want to just look out for, especially if you're dealing with sharpshooters. Definitely an example like Banshee. He's very keen on his sub-weapons to me, but I do focus more on the sub-weapon 2 because the sub-weapon 2 attacks are one of the more stronger versions of his attacks. So for physical range, why do I have a physical range? He does have a physical range, but I didn't have a sub-weapon that was high enough to counterbalance the 1 on revolving launcher. And this was a good find, believe it or not, because this was technically like having a sub-weapon 1 attack up to 21.8%. So you can look at sub-weapon and range in 2 different categories. Depending on what your character's about, this could technically be the sub-weapon damage added, and that's going to give you some pretty good results. Like even an example like Gun Tank. You just want to give him some physical range up. Everything up. Sub-weapon 1, attack up. Physical range, attack up. Sub-weapon 2, attack up. I'm not too keen on this one because it's only a percentage. I'd rather his range be so high he can damage like a truck. Though this is a sub-weapon that says, oh, but it increases all your sub-weapons. But if it's not going to increase my range up a little bit higher to at least the 1800s or 2000s, I don't want to run it. So I just pick a different... I would pick a different weapon, like a sub-weapon 2 that would affect it. Or, you know, I just do the whole sub-weapon thing and give it a balance. Usually what you always... like that. You see how this says 21 point? I would look for something like that. Something more physical. So let's look at the kid, like Sook, sub-weapon 1, 2, sub-weapon 1 attack up. So his sub-weapon 1, which is the right recoil, would pretty much be that much damage. But again, 11.6 goes to both, so they would average out, and then the range would go up maybe to like 1900 on your attacks, but your attacks would deal pretty heavy if you shoot him in the back. So I would give him this. It's a 15.5, and this affects... Again, this would affect everything, including damage, since you increased your range, but you also increased the physical melee range aspect. And not only that, if you take the sub-weapon 1 and sub-weapon 2, which are in the 20s, then you add these 15.5s to it, pretty much to his entire roster. So this would all pretty much add up to his physicals. So pretty much your sub-weapon kit in general for your character is going to actually melt the opponent. So that's why it's very important to always look for like those types of parts. That's when starting the game, if you do see a part that says B melee up, look at a character, see if it has a B melee. If it does, that's good. That means he can actually do a lot more damage when killing, you know, grunts or mobile suits. That's what we want. If it's a physical range, you can use that just in case. If you're trying to increase a character's 1 range, but you don't want to really ruin the melee stats, this is fine too, because your character's rocket bazooka will still do some damage. So then we have beam melee range. Again, this affects only the beam range attacks, which is the beam rifle, which will do a tiny bit more. And beam Nagatana is actually affected by the beam melee, so you give him a couple more beam melee range attacks. But you're mostly affected with beam melee, where it would be like, where is that at? 34, 42%. So it's a 42% increase on that 21-21. And pretty much that's the percentage, and that's what gets added up, and that's where all that melt damage comes from. It's a true story. So when really playing this game, look for these aspects of your character. What are they about? What do you think you can strive in with those sets? Obviously, this character is ranged, and you see I don't have a range, but I'd rather increase his sub-weapon 2 because the sub-weapon 2 is actually really good on damage. Though that's Gundam Hammer is a physical melee, my melee is at 1939, which means it'll still do some decent damage. And that's what you kind of want in the end. So, another subject to tag pretty much is here is you see how that says 5,000 capital? Whatever item says drops more capital, you're going to want your capital dump units. And there's 3 good ones in here if you like them. The O is a capital dumper because he stays in an SPA form called Pressure. This lasts for a while, just like how Alex can last a while with the Shoham armor. And this lets you build a lot of red capital. But you want that drop capital item that is on your character. You want the drop capital item on your character, but you want to have some damage up so you're not slacking on the damage department. And you can kill the units a little bit faster. And also, F91 obviously is a great capital dumper. MEPE is definitely great. Personally, definitely does a lot more damage, especially with a sub-weapon, so you focus on that. But obviously, this is good capital grinder as well, because he will drop red money when you're in special mode. So you try to use that with those drop capital parts, And those are going to really benefit you at the end of the day, because drop capital can vary to 4,000 and up. But this is how you're going to grind money if you want to really level up some characters you actually want to try to play. So obviously, once you beat the game on hard, you can start doing this. Get these parts first before you start the grind, so your grind is less freaking tedious. And then you're going to have a good time. So like I said, moral of the story of this entire thing of finding weapons, you want something that says beam, melee, range up. Those are the best ones. If it only affects one stat, that's fine. Don't worry about it. If it says beam, melee, attack, then it affects all your beam, melee attacks and some characters that are only beam, melee attacks. So this would be a great item personally, and period. This one says 25 points. See, they're very high ups once you start getting closer to the end of the game or start grinding out some really good parts for your characters to really smack face. So yeah, see this is an S tier part, not in the HP department, but it says beam, melee, range, attack up. Perfect. You can equip this, your character can have HP, and he's still going to do heavy damage with the amount of melee parts you have equipped. Very important stuff. So that's what I'm just trying to get you to understand, especially when you're playing this game at the start. If you find a piece, and it says beam, melee, attack up, or beam, melee, range, attack up, or it says physical melee attack up, or physical melee range attack up, you're going to want that. This just says plain physical range attack, so again, if a sharpshooter is just all physical range, you would just give them this part and they're still going to do some extra damage. This affects the entire physical range output. An example like that guy, believe it or not, is, Command Gundam. He's a very physical character. I don't worry about his main range. I want his sub-weapon physical range to actually hit. So that's why I equipped him with physical range and melee stuff, because he technically can do some melee combos. Physical melee, like I said, I increased his range, so he still does a lot of damage in the range, but I also made sure he could do some damage with the physical range melee attack up, so this affects all his stats on his range attacks, especially his hybrid range attack, which is pretty much, you know, physical with, like, I guess a beam included, apparently, which is weird. But yeah, that's how you really want to build your character. See, a full physical melee, what do? Find physical melee, and range. He doesn't have it, so it's just there for physical purposes. Usually, even if the part says just physical melee and range, if the character doesn't even have a physical range, don't worry about it. You're increasing his physical melees, period. So that's going to give you really solid damage. That's what you want to find. Those are your key goals. Always. Always. And that's why we do these how-to build videos. We're trying to show you it in action. And if I feel like I have to do a second build, then I do the second build just to show you there is going to be a difference. And you're like, huh, maybe I want to build that version, or I want to do this version, etc., etc. So when playing this game, even at the start, always find cards that say physical melee attack up, or beam melee attack up, or beam melee range attack up, or physical melee range attack up. If you find sub-weapon attack up, you can use that as well, depending on the unit, like freaking Strike Freedom and Moon Gundam, whose sub-attack is very strong when it comes to the Psycho Plates, so I would definitely recommend that as well. And it's a melee attack, so you want to boost your melee with that as well. And that's going to all add up to some very spicy melting damage. Alright guys, I think we covered everything you need to do when playing this game and starting this game. So I hope this does help you. I hope you look for those items when you start. Even if they're on a level 1 item with low stats, doesn't matter. If it says beam physical up, or beam melee range up, or physical melee range up, you equip that part so you can do some real damage, melting damage, even in the pre-game stuff. I crap you not, it will help you. If I knew this sooner, I would have had an easier time against Psycho Gundam way back in the past. Seriously. Alright guys, I'm done talking. 14 minutes. Jesus. But that's all we have here today, guys. I hope this tutorial does freaking help you. What parts to really find. What to really look for. How to increase your gameplay. So thanks for watching. Y'all be good. And I'll stay safe. We'll see you all another time.